It's a new week. Hello, I'm Bernie Miklasz back again with another Bernie Show here on STL Sports Central, presented by DraftKings. The crown is yours. I'm Bernie Miklasz, and I've been writing and talking about St. Louis area sports since 1985. I do 5 videos and write 5 columns each week here on STL Sports Central. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the like button. Thank you very, very much. Today's topic, I got a lot to get through, so maybe I'll try to talk fast. I usually stammer when I do so, but what the heck, right? Today's topic, the Cardinals aren't that far off. And if they handle their business properly this offseason coming up, the 2026 season doesn't have to be a straight up, hopeless, depressing rebuilding season that lacks interest. The Cardinals, I think, could have a more interesting team and a more entertaining team than they did this year. And that they have a team that could even be on the fringe of contention. And I'll explain that later on in the video. But all of this will begin with the offseason and Chaim Bloom's first offseason as the president of baseball operations in St. Louis. Now, I don't know what you guys are thinking. I'm sure people are growling and you know you're waiting for me to talk about how they're going to spend and they're going to do this and they're going to do that. Well, they're going to do this and that. They're just not going to spend a lot of money. So that's what you're not going to hear from me in this video. And I know it disappoints at least a percentage of y'all. You're not going to hear me saying they got to spend. There's going to be a time and place for that. And Bill DeWitt, in conversations I've had with him, says, you know, that he likes the Tampa Bay model, but he also wants stars, and he wants to keep stars that they have. So we'll cross that DeWitt bridge when we get to it. It's not here yet, but I just wanted to put that out there. And if that turns out to be false, well, I will raise holy hell for them not being truthful about that. Anyway, but going into 2026, no, the payroll is like the least of the things on the priority list of what Chaim Bloom has to do. This isn't going to be about throwing money around, but I'm going to tell you some stuff about his background in the Tampa Bay system. And, you know, believe it or not, they did spend money. They just spent it selectively and for the most part wisely. I'm in favor of that myself. I'll explain that as well a little later. But I don't think, you know, they're not going to make any, unless it's, you know, kind of extending a young player like Mason Wynn, maybe trying to sign J.J. Weatherholt early to a long-term deal. I don't see them doing anything with, you know, in any large way going into 2026, especially when we're likely to see another labor battle with the owners and the players shutting the game down for at least part of 2027. For now, the Cardinals have to set a firm foundation of a sensible rebuild, and they can't deviate from that by trading some of their more highly regarded prospects or making more stupid spending decisions that could undermine the roster, make the problems even deeper, and extend the mediocrity. The Cardinals deserve some time to rebuild because they've never set any time to rebuild, never set any time aside to rebuild since the DeWitts took over this ownership group after buying the team in December of 1995. DeWitt immediately rebuilt the team that was in decline and was having decreased attendance, and he did it with very smart leadership, obviously, from Walt Jocketty and Tony La Russa. But Bill DeWitt signed off on all of their plans. He was very enthusiastic about rebuilding, and they did. And they won the division the first year of the DeWitt ownership. And before that, the previous rebuild happened quickly under Whitey Herzog, who was hired by Gussie Busch in 1980. Whitey Herzog's a one-of-a-kind figure. It was also a different era in baseball. But I'm just saying, the Cardinals have had, you know, basically since the lost 70s decade, they've had 2 rebuilding periods, both of them relatively brief. And, you know, one was led by Whitey Herzog, the other one led by Walt Jocketty and Tony La Russa. I can only speak for myself, but going back to the Herzog years, I don't think a franchise that ranks, and this is where some of you get irritated with me, and I'm sorry, this is the way I feel. Some of you misinterpret it as me ripping fans. I'm not ripping anybody. I've always been a weird guy in that I like to incorporate perspective and opinions when you're judging the performance over a long period of time. You got to have some perspective. No one's saying the Cardinals are in good shape now, because if they were in good shape now, I wouldn't be making that case. They wouldn't be rebuilding if they were in good shape now, or a soft rebuild, or whatever you want to call it. But I don't think a franchise that ranks fifth in the majors and third in the National League in regular season wins over the last 44 seasons, going back to 1982, is committing some sort of baseball atrocity by taking some time to fix what is broken and fix that which absolutely needs to be fixed. And I'm talking about, of course, a traditionally strong and fertile player development system that was allowed to rot out. A player development system was such a huge part of every successful era they've had, but they allowed it to. This regime allowed it to rot out, especially in the area of a crucial area of cultivating young starting pitching. Why in the hell would anybody want to fix that? Right? I'm only being sarcastic. I can only speak for myself, but I don't think that a franchise that leads the National League in most pennants won over the last 44 years should be investigated by, I don't know, Amnesty International, some sort of human rights violations. I don't know. That's just me, right? I don't think a franchise that ranks second in the majors to the Yankees in both postseason wins and postseason games played in should be called to the International Court of Justice at The Hague to answer the sinister accusations made against them. That's just me. I don't think a franchise that's competed in the postseason 20 times since the start of 1982, fourth most in the majors, should undergo a federal investigation for consumer fraud. But again, that's just me. As I've said repeatedly, Cardinals ownership and management have made a lot of mistakes, mostly out of complacency and arrogance and neglect, which is unacceptable. And I don't blame anyone for being ticked off by that. I've been frustrated by this as well. And anyone who says I haven't hammered Bill DeWitt and John Mozeliak, simply you haven't been paying attention. And that's not my fault. That's your fault. But I don't know why we expected the Cardinals to win at a high level without any notable interruptions to continue to win after the last 44 years, and now a lull the last 3 years at least, longer than that a little bit. But I mean, how can you count on a team, especially a middle market franchise, to basically one of the bigger middle market franchises, but basically to just win without any interruption whatsoever? I just think that's a little detached from reality, especially after the closing of a glorious era that was highlighted by big stars, Hall of Famers, award winners, legends, all kinds of postseason games, postseason triumphs, including 2 World Series triumphs celebrated in St. Louis at the new Busch Stadium. But the Cardinals don't have to take a dive. So I'm disappointed by the downturn, and it could have been, if not totally avoided, it didn't have to be as bad as it became. But the Cardinals also don't have to take a dive. I believe this. They don't have to take a dive and send themselves and their fans to nonstop losing and hopelessness in one of these total tank jobs that takes years and years and years to pay off, if it does at all. The Cardinals can become, in my opinion, much more entertaining this coming off season by making moves that will at least get a bored fan base chirping. And by the way, when I say bored fan base, understandably bored fan base, it may not be enough for the payroll addicts, but I think most fans would like to have some action, some movement, some trades, some smart signings, if low key, but smart signings. Just a flurry of activity instead of yet another dull off season. And when I return for my second segment of today's Bernie Show, I will look to Chaim Bloom's Tampa Bay Rays background to give you some examples of what we might expect, but also to clear up a few things. But first, some exciting news from DraftKings Sportsbook. Missouri, get ready. Get ready because the wait is almost over. DraftKings Sportsbook, which is America's top-rated sportsbook app, is coming soon to the Show Me State, and you can sign up today. New Missouri customers can get $300 in bonus bets when we launch on December the 1st. So download now and place a $5 bet when DraftKings Sportsbook actually goes live on December the 1st. DraftKings Sportsbook will bring everything you need to elevate your game day experience, including live in-game betting, lightning fast payouts, and endless ways to get in on the action, all right from your phone. And when we officially go live in Missouri, you'll be betting with the Sportsbook app trusted by millions because it's safe and it's secure and it's got fast money withdrawals, among other things. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use that code STL Sports to grab the $300 in bonus bets with just a $5 bet when we go live on December the 1st. That's code STL Sports in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Well, call 1-800-GAMBLER. You must be 21 or over. You must be physically present in Missouri. Eligibility restrictions apply. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Excludes customers who redeem pre-launch sign-up offers. Terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. All right. Thanks for sticking with me. We appreciate DraftKings' loyal support to the Bernie Show here on STL Sports Central. Again, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Would very much appreciate it. You can hit the like button. You can leave comments. You can rip me for being annoying, which I am. Anyway, thank you. Chaim Bloom will take over as the Cardinals president of baseball operations after the season, and he's already been getting to work on a lot of things. You just don't know about him yet. And he'll be getting to work more publicly, making moves that will impact the Cardinals roster for 2026 season. The first thing he's going to do is talk about the Cardinals need to do what's necessary, and that includes whether you want to call it a rebuild or not. That's what it will be. I have no doubt whatsoever that is the plan. And down the road, we can talk about what the payroll may grow into. That's down the road. Totally irrelevant to 2026. I looked into Chaim Bloom's past in an attempt to clear up some misconceptions, but also to find out more about the Tampa Bay baseball operation that formed Bloom's philosophy, his background, and his experience. In other words, you got to go where the DNA is. Some people say, well, why aren't you talking about Boston? Because what he is doing in St. Louis to begin with is similar to the approach taken with the Tampa Bay Rays. Therefore, it is more relevant. The Red Sox example would be more relevant down the road a bit when the Cardinals are ready to flex some muscle and spend again. And once again, he traded Mookie Betts because he was ordered to by a meddling owner, okay? Gosh almighty, how many times do I have to say that? Anyway, I'm kind of tickled by the people who still have no idea whatsoever how difficult it is for Tampa Bay to win any dang thing. In both seasons that they won the American League pennant, the Rays ranked 28th among the 30 teams in payroll. The Rays made the playoffs 9 times from 2008 through 2024, and their 9 postseason teams had an average payroll ranking of 27th out of 30 teams. The 2009 Rays won 96 regular season games with the lowest payroll in the majors. And keep in mind, the Rays were competing in the rough and tumble American League East all that time. That's not an easy yard to fight in, right? And perhaps this is something to think about, because I think some people say, okay, that's nice. How cute. They won they went to the postseason 9 times. Big deal. Actually, it is. The Rays' 9 postseason trips since 2008 was more than any American League team except the Yankees. This is right. Since 2008, the Rays have made the playoffs more times than the big spending Red Sox, the big spending Rangers, the big spending Blue Jays. And their 9 postseasons over this time is the same number as the large market and now big spending Astros. I mean, I happen to think that's pretty impressive. Then again, I have an open mind, and I have, for the most part, a clear mind. Now, among National League teams, only the Dodgers and Cardinals have made it to the postseason more than 9 times since 2008. What's that? Cardinals? No, the Cardinals have never won anything, Bernie. Just kidding. Sorry. See, my sarcasm muscle, I have to work it. It keeps my energy up. Thank you for tolerating me. All right, since 2008, just 8 major league teams have won more postseason games than Tampa Bay, even though Tampa Bay has had one of the 3 or 4 lowest payrolls every single season, except for maybe one when they were 24th, I think. Wow, big spenders. Anyway, in all of those teams that I've mentioned that have made the 8 major league teams that have won more postseason games than Tampa Bay since 2008, all of those teams spent a lot more money than the Rays. And since 2008, think about this. Think about this, please. Since 2008, the Rays have won more postseason games than the Mets, the Braves, Padres, Blue Jays, Diamondbacks, Mariners, Twins, Brewers, among others. I think it's funny to look back to 2008 and see that Tampa Bay has, which is in Bloom's DNA, has made the postseason only one time less than the Cardinals, even though the Cardinals outspent the Rays on payroll by a massive amount. I've got another payroll comparison about the Cardinals and the Rays coming up later. And contrary to what many believe, the Rays were never, and this is why I wanted to talk about this, they were never a sit-back operation that let the prospects develop and then just left it at that. And, hey, everybody, kick back. We just got to wait for the prospects to come along. No, the Rays were the exact opposite because they had such limited revenue, relative to other major league franchises. They always had to stay busy. They always had to look for stuff. They always had to find a way to improve. They had to find hidden gems. They had to make value signings. They had to make trades where only they knew maybe what would become of those trades because they had their eye on a specific player. They also knew when to kind of move on from a veteran because once a guy starts to make the big money, well, the Rays can't afford much of that. They still can. But this was always one of the, and still is, one of the busiest front offices in the majors, and they've gotten things done. Once again, I adore the people who say, well, Bernie, it isn't about making the playoffs. It's about winning pennants and World Series. So why should I be impressed with what Tampa Bay's done? Well, the Rays have won a lot more than most teams, despite smaller payroll funding by a huge amount. Since 2008, the Rays have won as many league pennants as the Yankees, the Red Sox, and the Cardinals. And they have won more pennants than the Mets, the Cubs, the Braves, the Blue Jays, the Padres, teams that throw a lot of money around. They have more pennants won than all the teams I mentioned, plus many, 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 many more. But those teams that I mentioned like to throw the money around. But okay, how come they haven't won as many pennants as the Rays? Just wondering. If it doesn't mean anything, of course. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that a team has to actually qualify for the playoffs to contend for pennant in the World Series. I'll double check on that. I could be wrong, but I think you have to actually get to the playoffs. Anyway, unless there's some unforeseen miracle, the Cardinals are about to miss the postseason for the third consecutive season. And if they do, that will mean only 4 postseasons for the Cardinals over the last 10 campaigns. And here we go. You want to compare payrolls and everything? Oh, the Cardinals are cheap. Oh, they're cheap. All right. Of the 6 St. Louis teams that missed the playoffs, and I'm assuming the 2025 Cardinals will be one of them, 3 were ranked in the top 10 among the 30 teams, top 10 among the 30 teams in payroll. Another was 11th in payroll, and 5 were in the top half of the payroll rankings. Where'd all that money get them? Well, what about the 4 Cardinals teams that made the postseason over the last 10 years, assuming they missed this year? What about those 4 teams that actually did get to the playoffs? Well, those 4 teams had an average payroll ranking of 10th in the Major League Baseball rundown of the 30 teams. The average payroll ranking of those 4 postseason teams was 10th. And despite that top 10 payroll average, those Cardinals teams won a single postseason round and lost 11 out of 15 games. So you want to know why you should be impressed? I'm not asking you to be impressed. I'm just asking you to have some common sense and realize, when you're spending, $67, $84 million, $73 million, $76 million, those are some of the Rays payroll, final payrolls for the 26-man roster. When you're spending that kind of money, if you can make the postseason as often as they have and win more postseason games than a lot of teams have, you're doing a lot of things right. And that's the bottom line, doing things right, right? And just writing checks and throwing money away the way the Cardinals have done so often. How is that doing things right? That's my question. Here's the bottom line. Since the start of the 2016 season, let's tally up the number of postseason victories between the Tampa Bay team that does not impress many of you or some of you. Let's compare. Tampa Bay has won 15 postseason games. The Cardinals, 4, 15-4. And my payroll obsessive friends, over that time, since 2016, again, 15 postseason wins for Tampa Bay, 4 for St. Louis. Over that time, the Cardinals had outspent the Rays by a whopping $625 million in payroll through the end of the 24 season, because there's no playoffs yet. Again, since 2016, the Cardinals had outspent the Rays in payroll by a total of $625 million. But don't tell the payroll junkies that. Not when they can look down on teams like Tampa Bay and stick their nose up in the air and act like, well, why should I be impressed by that? I always like it. You look down your nose on Tampa Bay, a team that's done a hell of a lot more than the Cardinals have done in recent times, spending $625 million less, because they're a smart baseball operation. And that's what I want. Top of the list, I want a smart baseball operation because all things flow through that, right? All right. I'll tone it down because of my sarcasm button, I'm pressing it too often. That's my charm or something like that. Anyway, when I return for my third and final segment of Friday's Bernie, well, that's not Friday, Monday's Bernie Show, I'll review some of the moves Tampa Bay has made through the years to make the playoffs more times than any major league team except the Yankees, Dodgers, and Cardinals since 2008. But first, time for me to give the gentleman a little pep talk about Blue Chew, and I'm pleased to do it because I've been there, done that. Blue Chew can help raise your game for those intimate and pleasurable times with your partner. Big Blue can power you up. You don't have to hesitate. Take some action and then just chew it and do it. I know what Blue Chew has done for me, and I am of social care, Social Security, and Medicare age, and despite my baby face, and I want you to discover what Blue Chew can do for you. If you need a stronger bat, well, Blue Chew's in the equipment room, as I like to say, so go get it. And then go get it done in the bedroom or any damn room you like to, get it done in, right? Blue Chew is the original brand offering chewable tablets for enhanced performance. You will get your first month of Blue Chew free. You're just a few clicks away. Sign up at bluechew.com, consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you will receive your prescription at your doorstep in a few days. It's all done online. Simple, easy, private. Try your first month of Blue Chew free when you use the promo code Bernie. Just pay $5 shipping. That's it. That's promo code Bernie to get your first month free. It's only going to cost you $5 in shipping fees, and that's a hell of a deal there. So take advantage of it. Visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we sincerely thank Blue Chew for sponsoring the Bernie Show here on STL Sports Central. All right. Thank you again for sticking with me and putting up with my sarcasm, which is a little much today. I am who I am. What can I say? What I'm hoping for, we'll talk about this in our third segment. What I'm hoping for this coming off season is a busy few months, and it's going to make us feel reconnected to the baseball world. Just get some things done. I have no visions of grandeur here. In fact, I'm quite level-headed about it. But I would like to see Bloom do some stuff that he can do, like pull off some maneuvers that will make the 2026 team stronger and maybe more entertaining without messing with the top priority, the continued renewal of the player development success which has faded terribly, especially among the most important area, in my opinion, developing young starting pitching. It's starting to improve. There's already been progress on that front with Bloom and his two key additions, Rob Cerfolio and Larry Day, and there's going to be more additions as soon as he takes over as the president of baseball operations. Again, to go to the background, to the relevant information, where a team's got to just have like really, really disciplined payroll efficiency and find ways to get better despite having a limit on payroll. And the Rays, more than any franchise in Major League Baseball, have been able to win consistently along the way to overcome their obvious very low payroll disadvantage. I'll try to be quick about this because there's a lot of moves and I can't explain them all in great detail because some are three-way trades and all that stuff. Anyway, Bloom joined the Tampa Bay operation in 2007, and let's not miss the point here. He didn't make all those moves by himself, and I'm not claiming he did. but you got to understand how the Tampa Bay system works. He was part of a very smart outfit, really always had a really smart group of people there. They would have one guy who was the leader, of course. It was, Andrew Friedman and Matthew Silverman, Eric Nylander. But this model in Tampa Bay, where they had no choice but to be among the best, if not the best, at payroll efficiency, this is the model and this was the baseball intellect that was deeply ingrained in Chaim Bloom during his developmental years as a young executive. Let's go over some of the moves here. And this, again, there are other moves. I can't get them all. And of course, they made some moves, the Rays did, that didn't work out so well. But gosh almighty, I think that's true of all 30 teams, right? Right? I think so. Anyway, before the 2007 season, the Rays traded their former number 1 overall draft pick, Delman Young, to the Twins, and they got shortstop Jason Bartlett and starting pitcher Matt Garza, both of whom became key players on the 2008 Rays squad that reached the World Series. After the 2010 season, the Rays then traded Garza to the Cubs for a really good return that included the headliner, future all-star starting pitcher Chris Archer, plus Brandon Geyer, an above-average hitting outfielder who spent several seasons with the Rays. Bartlett then, a little later on, was dealt to, or actually it was that same offseason, he was dealt to the Padres for depth strength, including 2 pitchers and an infielder. And just because the 2 pitchers aren't big names, they certainly did their part to make that a great win of a trade for the Rays. Those pitchers, Brandon Gomes, if I'm saying that correctly, Brandon Gomes and Cesar Ramos gave the Rays combined 9 major league seasons of relief duty. That's a lot of seasons when you're giving up 1 player. And no offense to Mr. Bartlett, who helped them win the pennant, their shortstop in 2008. It's not like they traded in his prime Ozzie Smith, okay? And they got 9 years of quality bullpen service out of those 2 guys. All right. The Rays had a pending free agent. They weren't going to re-sign him. He was going to become a free agent after the year. His name, you remember him after he came over to the National League, Aubrey Huff. They traded him to the Astros for a little-known utility prospect that had all the prospect watchers scratching their heads. Why would they trade him for this guy? Nobody really knew. He's a utility guy. He doesn't even have one position. What do they want with Ben Zobrist? He only became one of the best players in Tampa Bay franchise history and was later an important piece of the 2016 Cubs team that won the World Series. At the time of the trade, because I was researching Zobrist actually a few years ago, a long time ago, when the Cubs signed him. But around baseball, people were scratching their heads like, what, who? Anyway, and I like this example of how that front office works. The Rays acquired the lefty starting pitcher, who many of you have heard of, I'm pretty sure, Scott Kazmir. They got him from the Mets. And he developed into a 2-time All-Star. He was really good there for a while, right? And then Kazmir all of a sudden couldn't get anybody out. But the Rays were able to offload what they owed him. I think he had $25 million left on his contract, and they offloaded that $25 million. After he just went south as a pitcher. It's complicated to explain the deal, but the Rays basically dumped a soured contract on the Angels. They got 2 players in return, and then they made a deal with the Padres for infielder Logan Forsythe, starting pitcher Matt Andriese, and valuable reliever Brad Boxberger. All of that came out of the deal where they offloaded $25 million. For a franchise like the Rays, to get that bad contract off your books after a pitcher unexpectedly goes bad, it's pretty good maneuvering, if you ask me. The Rays hired Joe Madden as manager, and Bloom was part of the screening committee that led to Madden's hiring. And, at the time Madden was hired, it's not like this guy was a big star or a known commodity. He was a respected coach with the Angels. And the Rays thought he sort of had that upbeat, energetic style that would be good for a young Rays team. And Madden did a heck of a job there. But this wasn't like exactly a no-brainer hire. It was when the Cubs hired him away from Tampa Bay. But I'm saying the Rays get credit for making a great managerial hire. And Chaim Bloom wasn't just sitting in the back of the room having coffee. He was on the screening committee. Here's another one that I love. The Rays signed their young outfielder, Carl Crawford, to an extension that really it maxed out at $32.5 million over 6 years. That included team options to buy out his first 2 years of free agency. Crawford, as a Ray, was in prime form. He wasn't the guy you saw much later on in his career who was just a dead weight on the payroll for other teams. Crawford was in prime form as a Ray. And in all, he played 9 seasons for Tampa Bay. He was a 4-time All-Star. He hit over 100 home runs. He stole 480 bases. He piled up triples and doubles. He won the Gold Glove and the Silver Slugger in the same season. You know, what a wise investment in your future. I think that's something Bloom will be interested in doing here, whether it be Mason Wynn, JJ Weatherholt, or someone else. I'm just giving some hypothetical examples. All right, I like this one, even though the guy they got is not a big name. But if you go back and look at 2008, you'll understand who he is. He wasn't Zach Wheeler, but he was Dan Wheeler. The Rays traded infielder Ty Wigginton. Remember him? They traded him to Houston for Dan Wheeler, and that righty reliever became a team leader, like a veteran presence in that bullpen, and he was a real workhorse in the pennant, and the team that won the pennant in 2008. And before the 2008 season, they also acquired a reliever named Grant Balfour, who had a 1.54 ERA as a setup man that year. They didn't give up anything for these guys. Yes, the Rays actually spent money too. I told you about Crawford. They did it the Rays way, the smart way. Before the 2008 season, they signed veteran free agents Cliff Floyd, who was an outfielder, basically a bat, closer Troy Percival, and Eric Hensky, who played, I believe, played first base, maybe some third base. Those three performed very well for the 2008 American League champions without a huge investment by Tampa Bay. Percival led the Rays in saves. Floyd put up an 804 OPS. Hensky hit 20 homers, and all three played a leadership role on that excellent team that lost to the Phillies in the World Series. Later on, the Rays also signed a big-name free agent reliever, Fernando Rodney, after he flamed out with the Angels, and other teams were wary of going near him because his decline was so bad. But the Rays and their pitching department, see, that's what happens. You know, analytics, things like that, can actually help you identify good value signings. They studied studied all the data, all the tape. They saw, here's a guy we can fix. We're very confident we can fix him. So they went and signed him. And sure enough, over the next 2 seasons, 2012 and 2013, Rodney had 85 saves over those 2 seasons. One of those years, I think he made 60 relief appearances. He was outstanding. That's the bottom line. There was another move where they traded an injured outfielder whose name isn't important because he never did anything. They traded him for pitcher Jesse Chavez, and then they flipped Chavez to Atlanta for closer Rafael Soriano, who came through with a 45-save all-star season in 2010. And the Rays then collected a little later 2 compensatory draft picks when Soriano later departed as a free agent. That's not a bad move, I would say. Pretty great move, actually. The Rays signed, here's one under the radar type move that they make. They get it. They signed a journeyman reliever named Joel Peralta for their 2011 bullpen, and for a team that I'm pretty sure made the playoffs. That's one of the teams that did. He appeared in 71 games and became the leader of a group of young Latino American players who were part of the playoff team. Like, he was even better than Tampa Bay thought he would be, but they thought he'd be very valuable in ways that weren't just limited to pitching. Before 2013, here's one of those complicated trades where you have to follow the bouncing balls, so to speak. Before 2013, the Rays acquired outfielder Will Myers and pitcher Jake Odorizzi in a trade that sent pitchers James Shields and Wade Davis to Kansas City. And that move was designed to give the Rays enhanced payroll efficiency. Listen, Wade Davis was huge when the Royals won the pennant in 2014 and the World Series in 2015. I think those were the years. I think he was there for both, but he was a key part. But With the Rays, he was a starting pitcher. They had never used him in relief except for here and there. So, yeah, they gave him up. They gave him up, sure, and you could make fun of them if you want. Look, James Shields was an overrated dude, and you know that. But this was all about it was time where those guys, Shields and Davis, were going to start making a lot of money, and the Rays just can't operate that way. And so they said, well, we have a chance to get Will Myers, a talented young outfitter, and we really like Jake Odorizzi. They've been trying to get him for years, and they made that trade just to get enhanced payroll efficiency. And so that wasn't the end, though. The Rays later pivoted to another deal that sent Myers to the Padres for a package that included left-handed hitting prospect Jake Bauers, who's still around. But Bauers was flipped by Tampa in a 3-team trade later on that got them, the Rays, Yandy Diaz. Pretty good hitter, huh? Really good hitter, actually. He's a big piece of the Tampa Bay team as of right now. See, you have to follow that whole line of trades because the Rays are always making trades. That one worked out well. We have to factor in the payroll concerns. That's one of the big reasons why they made that trade with Kansas City. The Rays made a shrewd free agent signing of starting pitcher Charlie Morton before the 2019 season. In 2 years with the Rays, Morton had an 18-8 individual one-loss record in the regular season. He went 5-1 in the postseason. And if you look at the 2020 postseason, when they got to the World Series, he was a significant reason for Tampa Bay getting to the World Series. He was terrific in the 2020. In those 2 years, he was terrific. But again, if I was looking strictly at his postseason stats in 2020. Very good, very good. The Rays twice signed franchise cornerstone third baseman Evan Longoria, who I think is the best Ray ever. Pardon me. They signed him twice to long-term team-friendly contract extensions. Again, that's a smart way to do things. Now, listen, I've left some other moves out. There are just too many. And, of course, the Rays made some deals, as I mentioned much earlier, that did not pan out. And we can say that about everybody else as well. A team like that's got to make a lot of trades because they're always like trying to stay one step ahead of everybody else because they can't just spend money to kind of put some paint, put some tape on their mistakes. So when you make such a high volume number of trades as they do, some of them aren't going to work out. But since they've made the postseason so many times and been in the World Series as many times as the Yankees and Cardinals since 2008, I would say they've done well. My hope for the offseason is to see Chaim Bloom get busy by bartering players who don't fit the long-term future because they won't be signed to a long-term contract. So there's really no reason to hold on to them if you're not planning to invest in them for the long-term future. Two leading candidates of what I'm talking about we all know this, are Brendan Donovan and Lars Nootbaar. The Cardinals also have some other players who could be moved in trades. A lot depends on whether Nolan Arenado, Sonny Gray, and Wilson Contreras are willing to waive their no-trade clauses. And I wouldn't expect the Cardinals would get anything for Arenado other than to clear the books of salary. The other two, I don't know. I'm sure there's a market. To what extent, I don't know. Anyway, the Cardinals also have a surplus of catching, and they got to be careful because their catching prospects are very good. Don't want to see them trade the wrong guy. But they could cash in one of them for a prominent return. If Bloom can pull it off, I can see the Cardinals securing a young and talented, cost-controlled starting pitcher. Maybe somebody that the rest of baseball looks at and aren't as impressed as Chaim Bloom and his people are, right? But Bloom and his most trusted associates have a great eye for young talent. They also have the technology. They've gotten Bill DeWitt to pay for the technology that's going to put the Cardinals back in the game as far as the rest of the major leagues. And because of the technology, the Rays in particular have been able to identify pitching talent that other teams overlook. And that is a huge part historically of the Tampa Bay front office playbook. So why do I think the Cardinals could be a fringe contender in 2026? Well, they have a winning record since the start of last season. And by the way, I'm not saying, let's have a parade for that. No, I'm just pointing out that hasn't exactly been a great time for Cardinals baseball, as you know, because they're not drawing anybody. They're not drawing much this year, although they're going to go over 2 million. But it's different here because you're used to 3 million, not 2 million. But anyway, the Cardinals have a winning record since the start of last season. And I think for 2 years in a row, they've generally speaking outperformed their negative run differential by a significant amount. Number two, they were in contention at the trade deadline in 2024 before fading. This season, despite having a lethargic offense that's been among the very worst in baseball after the first 2 months, they also have a rotation that ranks 24th overall in earned run average for the season, but it's much worse than that since June 30th. The Cardinals have clawed their way back to a 500 record, and in my opinion, would definitely be in postseason contention had the current front office pulled the plug on Eric Fetty instead of keeping him around long enough for the Redbirds to get skunked to a 5-15 record this season in games started by Fetty. I mean, think about that. You take that away, and Michael McGreevy, no one's saying he's Bob Gibson, but boy, this team's got a really good record when he starts games. So with smart people in charge of it, the word rebuild can also mean in St. Louis, it could mean opportunity by finding a way and taking advantage or being ambitious in every way there is to get players, to go out and find ways to get players and increase your talent base. That's what I mean by, we could use the word rebuild, sure, but to me, it means opportunity. So the Cardinals can continue to add talent, even if that talent does not pay immediate dividends, but some of it will if they get enough of it or make enough moves to increase their chances of getting more talent that can help right away. Anyway, I went on long enough. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for putting up with my sarcasm. Thank you for watching and supporting The Bernie Show. Please subscribe, hit the like button, leave your comments, and support our sponsors. And a special thanks to DraftKings for presenting The Bernie Show on STL Sports Central. Have a pleasant rest of your Monday. Thank you.